Sorry, my computer's being slow. All right, so thank you for that introduction. I'll be co-presenting with Jolene today, and we'll be talking about remote recruitment in 2 trials under the Wired Center. The first one that we're going to talk about is the MyBP My Life trial. So just a little bit background on the MyBP My Life trial. It's a multi-center randomized controlled remote clinical trial. We do recruit from 2 locations, one being Michigan Medicine and the other being our partners in Flint, Michigan. So Hamilton Community Health Network, which is a federally qualified funding clinic. I'm pretty sure I got that wrong. But what we do is we basically provide patients with a blood pressure cuff and a Fitbit. We ask them to measure their blood pressure about once a week and wear their Fitbit every day for at least 8 to 10 hours. We have 2 arms, a control and a remote. Along with our blood pressures and our daily steps, our intervention group also receives push notifications, which encourage activity and a lower sodium diet, as well as ways to report their low sodium choices throughout the week. So a lot of technology, everything's done remote, including our recruitment. And our trial is 6 months, and our primary outcome is to see a reduction in systolic blood pressure over 6 months. So here's the big part. We aim to recruit 600 participants, 300 from Michigan Medicine and 300 from Hamilton Work. For Michigan Medicine, our cohort receives 2 emails, and we found that 2 emails were really efficient amongst Michigan Medicine participants. So with 2 emails, we got a ton of responses. With Hamilton Community Health Network, we didn't see a ton of responses with our emails. So our participants would receive 2 emails as well as 3 text messages. For our texting system, we use Musio, which is similar to Twilio if anyone is familiar with both of those services. For our recruitment process, like I mentioned earlier, it differs between each cohort. So for Michigan Medicine, we have a data set pulled from Data Direct, and that data set was pulled to capture anyone that has a diagnosis of hypertension or high blood pressure. We take 200 potential participants from our data set every week, and we email them twice. We'll get the first email on Monday. For anyone who hasn't replied to the first email, we'll get a second email on Wednesday. For those participants, for those patients / potential participants that reply to our emails, with our Michigan Medicine side, we're also able to pre-screen their EMR. So we go in and just check if they're in any other studies. We check if they have high blood pressure. We also check if they have heart failure. This just helps decrease the amount of screening calls that we need to make to find out that information. We'll then email a participant letting them know that we reviewed their EMR and we found that they are not actually eligible for our study. If a participant does email back saying that, no, they do in fact have hypertension or they have completed a previous study, then we'll go ahead and set up a screening call with them too. So we don't use the EMR as our source of truth. We use the participants, but it's a really good thing to utilize with Michigan Medicine because it just saves the coordinator so much time. After we pre-screen, we then set up a screening call, and that's when we go through our REDCap screening, CRF, double check their history. Are they eligible to participate? Their arm size for our cuff, and their phone compatibility for our application. We do use My Data Helps for the consent process and our sodium and like the connecting all of our applications in My Data Helps. If they are eligible with screening, we then continue with a consent call. The consent call, we go through My Data Helps to check out to get through the consent. And then if they are, and as well as a sodium screener, which they also do in My Data Helps. If they're eligible after the sodium screener, we then set up an enrollment visit. Again, this is all done over the phone. And with our enrollment visit, that's when we get their Fitbit and their blood pressure connected onto their phones and into our application. Now, it did differ a little bit with our Hamilton Community Health Network cohort. We don't have that data set from Data Direct, but we do have a data set from Hamilton Community Health Network. We found that a lot of emails were missing, so that's when we also decided to utilize the texting system. We would text 200 participants the same way, but we would get minimal responses. So we then moved on to texting for Emocio. They would get up to 3 text messages. If they didn't respond to the first one, they would get a second. If they didn't respond to the second, they would get a third. We don't have that EMR pre-screening feature on the Hamilton Community Health side either. So we just set up a screening call and go through the screening questions. And then after screening, it's the same process as Michigan Medicine. We'll go through the consent and we'll go through the enrollment. I think this is really important to know if your study is dealing with I guess just a different population other than Michigan Medicine. You just want to be aware of the potential barriers that you might face in recruiting. Research is so heavily integrated into the Michigan Medicine system, and it's not like that in other communities. So really thinking about what else to implement in that community would really help. And for us, it was texting. And texting is how we got like 95% of our Hamilton Community Health Network of participants. This is just a cool roadmap of what our entire recruitment process looks like up until the point they are enrolled. So the first visit is the recruitment, second is a screening call, third is the consent call, and then fourth, we have the enrollment visit, which is when they are officially enrolled in the study and begin the 6-month trial. Now, like I touched on a little bit earlier, we do have a lot of limitations in remote recruitment, but that's not to say that it can't be done. It just, with our Hamilton Community Health Network, it just required 1.4 FTEs instead of 1 to Michigan Medicine. But if your study is taking place in Michigan Medicine, then those limitations aren't that pronounced. So major limitations are technology barriers. We were a heavy technology-based study, so we had a Bluetooth blood pressure cuff, the Fitbit, as well as My Data Helps, and just getting all 3 of those applications onto a person's phone, as well as getting their devices connected, could be a bit of a challenge, but it's not to say that it can't be done, because we did get it done with 600 participants, which is really cool. A lack of personal connection and trust is also something you're missing with the remote recruitment. So it's just taking that extra time to really build a connection and relationship with your participant, whether it's over the phone or via email. Again, with Hamilton Community Health Network, a major limitation that we faced was recruiting from a third-party name. A lot of people from Flint aren't really familiar with Michigan Medicine, so just that extra explaining that we aren't spam and we weren't trying to steal or take anything from them. Future solutions is maybe in person. So if you find that it's really difficult to remote recruit, you can explore at least like having a community event or something just to kind of get your name out there if you still want to remote recruit. But another thing is to really utilize Zoom calls. So that just gives you like the extra personal layer. We didn't utilize Zoom calls that much, but I think that it would be something that would help future studies. And now we're going to move on to Jolene that will talk more about Smart HF.
So I'll go over the Smart HF remote recruitment strategy. You can move to the next slide, Sarah.
Everything's freezing on me. There we go.
So just a little bit about the study. So the Smart HF trial, we're looking at the impact of an adaptive patient-centered web application on medication optimization in heart failure patients with a reduced ejection fraction. The Smart HF study, it's a multi-center. We currently have Emory University, Washington University, and Henry Ford Hospital, as well as Michigan Medicine participating. It's a 12-week prospective randomized controlled multi-center clinical trial. The study is investigating the efficacy of an adaptive web application to facilitate guideline-directed medical therapy, GDMT, optimization with overall 225 patients. So participants that are eligible, they'll be randomized via Qualtrics to the web application, to intervention or control in a one-to-one manner and stratified by site. Next slide. So a little bit more about the intervention. It's an adaptive medication optimization web application that was designed at Michigan Medicine by Mike Dorsch, PharmD at the pharmacy and programmers that also work pharmacy. That it extracts and analyzes the AHR data, links into Epic with a computable medication optimization algorithm. The algorithm, it provides a medication optimization score and outputs medication recommendations that are written in a patient friendly manner. And those are email or sent by text to the patients. Participants are reminded of the recommendations 1 week, 3 days, and then the same day of their clinic visit by email or text. The medication recommendations, I'm looking at the comment there. So once a patient is randomized and if they're via Qualtrics, they'll go into the web application, as you see now on the screen. The coordinators will receive a email that a patient was randomized, consented, and will determine if they're randomized to the intervention or the control group. And then we will see, as a patient will see, if they were provided medication recommendations or not. So this is just to show you, this is what the patients will see. Up to your left, they'll click on their healthcare institution, and then to the right, at the end, the results, those are the recommendations that they would receive. There's various, some of them won't even, some could not receive recommendations. Go ahead, you can move to the next slide. Okay. Screening, patients are screened weekly via MyChart, Michigan Medicine Heart Failure Registry. Patients who meet the following criteria are selected from the registry to be screened for inclusion/exclusion. So I can filter the list by patients that have an appointment within 30 days with a cardiologist or their a general medicine provider. And then patients who also have an active MyChart portal. And then patients who meet that criteria are then added to a patient list within MyChart. And then if they're eligible to participate, they will receive the MyChart patient portal notification, and then also an email via Qualtrics. So once a patient is identified as eligible, so I'll add a message to their MyChart patient portal, just showing that they have been identified. The patient will then, the message will then appear in the patient's portal until it's acknowledged. So if they see it, they can choose if they're interested or not interested. If they're interested, they can click on a link that will take them to Qualtrics to review the consent form, and then where they can sign the informed consent. And then they'll be towards the end, that's where they'll be randomized, and then they'll go into the SmartyChef application. If they choose that they're not interested, then I'll see that in MyChart, patients not interested, and then those patients won't receive the reminder emails via Qualtrics. In the MyChart patient portal, it's maintained by the study coordinator. If the patient does not respond or their appointment has passed, then they're no longer eligible. And then the coordinator must change the study status within their portal, just so that the patient then won't click on the link. They're no longer eligible. So the coordinator will have to remove that. So to the left here, so that's the message that the patients will see in the portal. So that you'll see the link there to participate, and then also a link to view a copy of the consent form. And then, so you will need to receive IRB approval to use the MyChart portal for recruitment. We worked with the HITS application coordinator, Eugen, I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name, Helperanu. And then he enables it, he works with you, he's great. But there's a link there if you want more details on utilizing the patient portal. Next slide. Recruitment via Qualtrics. So these are the messages. We've created templates for each of the sites. And so we have initial email for the patients, and then we have a reminder email. And so the patients can click on the links. It'll be the survey link is the actual consent form. They can click on the link just to download a copy of the consent form as well. So they're notified. So within 30 days of their clinic visit, and then a reminder email sent about 2 days after the initial email is sent, and then a follow-up phone call is placed within a week of their clinic visit. So yeah, if you're interested in learning more about this, you can reach out and let me know if you have any questions.
I think I did have a couple questions in the chat. Sorry, I didn't mean to ignore anyone, but I wasn't reading as I went along. But I did put up our texting messages that we used. I did forget to mention that we also ran into like a spam issue, just because we were mass texting the same text messages over and over again, that we then moved on to a randomized texting system. So we had a bank of 5 different text messages that would automatically circulate based on the storyline for that week, which our research specialist, Brad Trimpower, helped us kind of formulate together. We also found that maybe including the potential participants' name also helped the text messages get received and not blocked by the server. Another question that I saw was, did we see an improvement in responses between the second and third text message? That unfortunately is something that we wanted to look into, but we were unable to figure out which text message a potential participant was replying to. So they could reply on day 3, but have only gotten the first one just based on when the text messages were sent out. We did see, I did see an influx of text messages around the second text message storyline. The third, not so much. So I would say the first and second text message were our most popular ones. Some potential participants even replied 2 weeks later to an older text message. So we weren't able to measure which text message was the most effective, but the bulk of participant replies did come in at least the first week.
And I just want to add, like, the nice thing about text messaging is it's really low effort, right? It's not like recruitment phone calls, which are significantly more effort. But it's always interesting to me when investigators are like, did you try the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th time? I'd like to always be able to give some data about at what point really are you not helping? And are you in fact becoming a nuisance? And that could damage your study's reputation.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. So at the end of our text messages, we also put like a no or stop to stop the text messages.
Right, and I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. So that helped too. And we would get a lot of no's and a lot of stops. Unfortunately, our texting system was also sent an automatic reply saying, well, thank you if you change your mind. And that could also be like a second annoyance text message, but it's good to send it just in case they do change their mind.
Agreed.
But I 100% echo what you're saying is sometimes that third call, that third text message, that 5th email is just way too much. And we don't really want to force anyone to participate in a research trial. Any other questions for either Jolene or I?
I have one you may not be able to answer. Through your presentation, you kind of mentioned 3 different programs that you're utilizing for mobile data collection. And if I recall, it was RedCap, Qualtrics, and then My Data Helps. Is there a reason or something specific that you found that each program does the best, that you would have to utilize 3 different programs. Like I think you're explaining Qualtrics does text messaging and why you chose not to do that through My Data Helps or through RedCap. I just maybe a little more information on why all 3 are being used for one study, or something you found helpful for one over the other, maybe.
Yeah, I do want to, I guess, like reiterate is the My Data Helps trial didn't use Qualtrics at all. So we used My Data Helps once they were past screening. So that was just to get their information into our app. That's kind of like what their end of inputting their data is. But Jolene's, the study that Jolene's working on, Smart HF, they did utilize Qualtrics. So the difference between Qualtrics and My Data Helps, honestly, I can't answer that. I think it's just building the study and what they decided to go with.
That's okay. I just thought I would just see if there was something you found more beneficial for one over the other. I know each study is very different, and we utilize in my program each one as well. So just trying to get a different opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked on other studies that don't utilize My Data Helps, and I personally really liked My Data Helps for the consent document at least. You're able to send them an invitation and they walk through the consent form on their mobile device, which is really cool. And then that was also the application we used to get their data. So they would connect their Fitbit and their blood pressure cuff to My Data Helps. That way their blood pressure readings and their steps would automatically go into My Data Helps.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
This just might be a silly question because I haven't been involved in conducting a study. Does the enrollment visit, is that with the coordinator or is that with the like who is the person on the Michigan Medicine side that participates in enrollment visits?
The coordinators. So it's all the visits are done with the coordinators and the participants.
Okay. And then I think you answered this. I'm just going through the questions in the text. The BP monitor is Bluetooth as well, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So they're able to link their Fitbit application and their OnRun application, which is the Bluetooth, to My Data Helps, and which is the Bluetooth blood pressure cuff. So once they take their blood pressure reading, it should, if works smoothly, should automatically go into My Data Helps. So everything's Bluetooth, and we try to automate it as much as possible.
Okay, and there was one more question. Are the med recommendations only sent to the patients, or do the doctors receive them as well?
So the study coordinator will receive, or the study team will receive the medication recommendations as well as the patient. So we leave it up to the patient to provide those recommendations to the physician at their clinic appointment. The only way we, at 12 weeks, when we do the follow-up phone call, we then ask the patient, did they provide those recommendations if they received them? There's really no way of telling. So in the last 4 months, we've enrolled a total of 10 patients. Looking at their clinic visit, we haven't seen it noted that patient provided medication recommendations, patients, on the Smart HF trial. So the only way we know is if by asking that question at 12 weeks.
I have some other questions, but I want to give other people a chance. Are there other questions? Okay, so I want to make sure I'm getting this right. So I'm wondering why, well, does My Data Helps have a texting module? I thought they did. So I'm wondering about the decision to use Mocio instead of My Data Helps.
This is actually the first that I'm hearing that My Data Helps has a texting. I didn't know they had a texting system.
It's somewhat limited. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing. Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah. Like you can program notifications to send out at a certain cadence. but you can't like type in a custom message to a specific participant and they can't reply to you. So, you know, not a whole lot you can do.
I think the caveat with that might be also it sends notifications once a participant is consented. So with My
Yes.
Data Helps, we got that okay for them to participate or want to participate in our study with, whereas Mocio was just like mass texting for over 5,000 potential participants that didn't want to participate or didn't even reply.
Okay, that's helpful. All right. If there are no more questions, I'm going to stop the recording.